Good evening, everybody. This is Mark with Beyond the Struggle podcast. I am here this evening with Ronnie. Ronnie, how we doing tonight?
Lord bless me today. Woke up, stood up. It's a good day, man.
Absolutely, absolutely. Amen to that. Sorry about that. Sorry about the beautiful flowers behind me, but this is where we're at tonight. So it was either that or on the back porch, and we're in the middle of moving to the new podcast room. So this is what we get. It's one of those. So what I want to do with you, Ronnie, is I want to start off and let you have the floor. What I want to do is I want you to go back as far as you can to your best memories or to where it all started bad. It's up to you, your call. I'll take any of it, but start from the story and I'll let you go in. If I have any questions, I'll just jump in and ask you some questions as we go. All right.
Sounds good. I guess let me start with my name's Ronnie. I'm an alcoholic and an addict. And man, it's been a crazy life. So come from a broken home, home of violence. Not a lot of trust. There was love in the home. My mom always showed us love, but she's going through her own battles and currently in the process of recovery herself. So it was just kind of a giant mess growing up. Had a abusive stepfather. There was physical abuse, emotional abuse, all kinds of different abuse coming from pretty much every angle from as far back as I can remember. My dad kidnapped me, and right after him and mom split, and took me to California. And it's just been a life of trauma. So growing up with an alcoholic mom and an alcoholic stepfather, both drug addicts, both going through their own thing, it was hard to find stability. And it kind of bled, well, not kind of, it bled over to all the kids, all the way from my older brother. We were a family of, there's five of us kids, and one of which is no longer with us. He ended up taking his own life in jail about 16 years ago. So we've all kind of gone through our own struggles. Me personally, not getting the attention I needed. I kind of um, sought attention any way I could get it. So I was always a very smart kid, but always found myself on the wrong side of the stick, unfortunately. And one thing led to another. I ended up getting incarcerated my first time at the age of 12. There was some pretty minor stuff in South Dakota. The judicial system there, they're not very lenient with kids. So I had a theft problem, missed some school, ended up, getting into a brotherly fight, as all brothers do. And that ended up leading me into the juvenile department of corrections at age 12. So at age 12, I went to various different detention facilities and ended up in the juvenile state prison as well as the South Dakota State Training School, which were attached to each other. Trying to bounce back and forth between there for about 3 years, 3.5 years, till I was almost age 16. 6 months of that I was spent in segregation, where it was 23 hours locked down, 1 hour out by yourself to walk around, talk to yourself, and take a shower. And then it was back to the lockdown. So traumatic to say the least. And then as soon as I got out, through different avenues, that's kind of when I first started drinking, smoking weed, and really didn't change at all in the juvenile prison system. If anything, it just made me a better criminal and didn't really teach me any of the values or refine me in any way at all. So from there, just started trying to be the cool kid. Really didn't like South Dakota that much. Ended up moving out of South Dakota, where I was staying with my mom and a new stepfather, who was the greatest thing that's ever happened to my mom. Taught me a lot. I wish I would have learned a lot sooner. But ended up moving out of South Dakota just because I was still on probation and that kind of thing, and then moved back down here to Colorado. So growing up in South Dakota, especially being our family was kind of the black sheep of the community. Very, very small community. My closest neighbor was almost a mile away. Spent a lot of time working on my uncle's farm, and even the neighbors were involved in some of the abuse. So, but ended up leaving all of that lifestyle. Came from a graduating class. I think I left my sophomore year. My graduating class was 6 people. K through 12 was less than 100 people, and really didn't have any friends at all to speak of during that time. But then moved down here, went to high school, Chaparral, and all of a sudden I'm in a graduating class of over 1,000 people. And really just kind of, having gone through what I did, found a way to get in with I'd say the bad crowd. Back in the day, I would have considered it the good crowd, but started hanging out with a bunch of friends, trying to be the cool kid once again, trying to keep all those, or build as many friendships as I could. And that's really when I started drinking heavily and using heavily. I mean, everything from cocaine to ecstasy, and you name it. I was pretty much an anything addict at that point. Did that for a while. Did end up graduating high school, but never thought of pursuing college. Thoughts of the future back then were few and far in between. I was more worried, so used to being in survival mode that it was just, hey, what can I do to get rid of the trauma and the pain now? Excuse me. So that just led to, though I got caught less, I continued to go down a path that was just very destructive and not very helpful to the ones they cared about. Anybody I held close. It was at that time, it was more of, what can you do for me, or how can I use you to my benefit, instead of coming from a place of love, which is where I try to act from now. But was living with my dad, when I was age 21. That's when I got the phone call where my dad let me know that my brother had committed suicide. He hung himself in jail when he was 20 years old, which just kind of brought up a lot of that past trauma that I kind of started. I had never dealt with it, but I stuffed it down so I didn't have to deal with it. And that's why I turned to drugs and alcohol at such a young age. And of course, both of us grieving, we kind of tried to find solace in the bottom of the bottle. Mom was still drinking very heavily at that time. Ended up leaving Colorado for a short time. Swore I'd never go back to South Dakota when I moved away, but because of circumstances, I felt the need to be close to my brothers, my sister, and my mom at the time. So moved back there, started working as a bouncer at a bar, and trying to just pick up pieces where they were, and continued down a path, and started drinking even more heavily. Didn't see it as a problem at the time. Never really got into any kind of trouble with it. Never really interfered with work or personal life. But looking back on it, that was really kind of the tipping point of when things started to go really south really fast. And so continued drinking, of course, working at the bar as a bouncer didn't help. I'd work at the bar and then get off and then go across the river, which was in a different time zone. So got off at 2, went across the river. It was only 1 o'clock over there, continued drinking and just hanging out with people that, didn't really have my best interest in mind at all, nor did I at the time. So got into a little bit of trouble, almost caught my first DUI. I was able to plead it down, and through some classes, I ended up just getting a reckless driving. But at that time, I could tell once again that the place I was in was just no good. So instead of dealing with my problems and facing them head on, I've ran away from South Dakota again, back down here to Colorado, and shortly after that, um, met a girl, typical story, fell in love, love at first sight. And for the last 13 years, we've been partners together. I proposed to her back in 2018, shortly after I found out she was pregnant with our first child, my son Christopher. And you would think that that would have been enough at the time to really turn things around. And, somehow throughout the past, I've always found a way around the system. How can I manipulate this or make this work to my advantage without really having to do any serious change or make any serious progress towards becoming a better human being, a better father, a better husband, just a better person in general. And got real back into using cocaine and alcohol to kind of cope with things at the time. Was working at a dealership. Dealership life is crazy. There's drugs and alcohol everywhere. And working in the service department, started off in sales, but then switched over to the service department and quickly kind of climbed the ranks. But I was working 60, 70, 80 hours a week, making pretty decent money at the time. And, just kind of pissed it all away, man. There were so many opportunities, not only at the dealership, but even before then, where I just didn't seize the opportunity. I would rather go get fucked off and, kind of anything to relieve the pain. Looking back at it now, all that trauma that I've gone through as a child was always very present, no matter how far down I tried to stuff it or drink it away. It was always right next to me, tapping me on the shoulder, reminding me that,
Th-
or telling me at least that, what a failure I was and that I was never going to succeed and that I come from shit. And so shit's all I'm ever going to be worth.
yeah.
That's all I'm ever going. Had some really good friends I've built over the years that, have supported me and always thought very highly of me. Not all of them were aware of the drug use or the alcohol use or how much of a problem it really had become. But after my son was born, just because of that, the scare of overdosing or whatever else was mixed in there, I stopped using coke so much and traded one demon for another. That's when I really, really started hitting the bottle and trying to drink my pain away, get rid of all the sorrows. And always thought therapy was, not for me. It's not going to do me any good. Nobody's going to tell me anything I don't already know. Having gone through that as a child and in the incarceration system or in the judicial system, a lot of that stuff was required. But I did what I had to get through it, never really took it to heart or thought, hey, maybe there's something there. Maybe there's something that can actually help me. And and so I was just once again manipulated the system to get through it and just get back to doing what I wanted to do because, well, screw what everybody else thinks. I've suffered enough. Now it's my turn to live.
Yeah.
So it's very selfish in that aspect. And then so I proposed to my wife, had our son. That was a really, really tough pregnancy. The childbirth, I thought I was going to lose them both. She had been in labor for 29 and a half hours. Her heart was going down. His heart rate was going down. And it scared the shit out of me, man. Doctor ended up deciding, hey, we're not going to even ask questions anymore. They tried to remove it with forceps. That didn't work. They were going to try the plunger. That didn't work. And finally, she had a level 4 episiotomy. And just watching the whole thing, was very grateful that they both came through. And I've always kind of been not super religious, but I've always believed in God, though a lot of the times, just given what I've gone through, I didn't always feel that he always had me in mind, though I know now looking back that he's the only reason I made it through any of that.
Amen.
But kind of started rekindling that relationship a little bit, but then it's all too easy, especially, whether things are going good, things are going bad, whatever it is, when you're in the clutches of addiction, especially when you don't realize that it is a problem that you do have a problem with drugs and alcohol. It's easy, man. Let's celebrate or fuck, I had a bad day. Let's relax a
Yeah.
little bit and think back and have a few. Or my problem is a few was never enough.
Well,
I
you
drink myself into
you
oblivion.
the thing that we do as addicts, bro, and you got to remember this. And you're talking about the Bible, and that's one of the things is, we've been feeding the flesh, the fleshly desires our whole life. It's kind of like having to learn how to undo something that you took 20 some years to do. That's not going to happen overnight. You know what I'm saying? That's the hard part as an addict that we don't talk about. That's the gray area that people don't talk about is we have to retrain ourselves to learn how to have fun without alcohol or without drugs, or go to a party and not feel like we have to drink and get jacked up to get on the dance floor, or drink to have sex, or you know what I'm saying, like to make things better. And it's like all the years of going through life and feeling like that's the normal. Now we have to learn how to do it and it doesn't feel right. So when you talk about like, I just got that promotion, shit, let's go get some beers, you know what I mean? And you're like,
Yeah.
that's the normal. And not only, and the worst part about it, Ronnie, is it's not just the normal. Society makes it the normal. You know what I mean? Every time you turn on the TV, every time you open your Facebook, it's right there. Celebrate. Let's do this. Let's do that. And that's the hard part when you get into your recoveries, because no matter, I always tell everybody, no matter where you go running, you're there. You could go to China. You could go to China, man, and say, hey, I'm going to start a new life. I don't want to be around those drugs in America. Guess what, buddy? Ronnie's there. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I don't want to be, I'm going to go to China because I heard they don't drink as much over there. I'm going to I'm going to get away from this. Hey, at the end
yeah,
of the day, Ronnie's there. You're there. It's you. It's nobody else, man. And we talked about this before I came on camera with you. Those are the core issues I was talking about. You know, losing somebody. I lost my brother as well. I lost my mother. Uh, I never knew my father. So yeah, I was like on a, I didn't have no kids. I was on a rampage too. So I feel you, you know, but you know, I never was the person to do like, oh man, you know what I mean? I don't got this into this last run. You know, then I turned around and put it in. I was like, you know what? If I died tomorrow, I don't think anybody would really care. You know, and that's an ugly place to be. And I hear that, I hear it in your voice about that's pretty damn close where you were going.
yeah. I'm in, and even just recently. So yeah, losing them and realizing, how much they meant, and then going right back into the clutches of addiction. Had my daughter, and man, I've drinking. I always used to joke with my wife, though, ex-wife. Now looking back at it, it really never was a joke. It should have been more of a warning sign. But when I drink, I become Ronaldo. And Ronaldo, he just don't give a fuck. All his problems, it's like, dude, you got something
Yeah.
to say? Let's go. Like who are you to tell me I've got a problem?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So yeah, going through all that, and then struggling so unnecessarily throughout the times because if I hadn't been using drugs and alcohol, if I hadn't been pissing all my money into a bottle or up my nose, I would have had a damn good life. I did have a damn good life, you
You did have
know?
a good life.
Absolutely, man. I had a wife who was always there for me through the ups and downs, and we both kind of struggled with alcohol use. But the fact of the matter is no matter what I was going through, no matter how many times I traded jobs or what was going on, she always supported me. It's the little things, and not to say that that's a little thing because that's huge, but if you're willing to take the big things for granted, you're going to lose sight of the little things that matter too, and that's what happened, man. I was started on my pity pot, and it's like, oh, woe is me. I've got all this stuff to deal with, all this trauma, and now it's coming to the surface. Now it's like, all right, now staring me dead in the face, saying, hey, you're coming with me whether you like it or not. Grabbing me by the collar and dragging me through hell, and really that's kind of where I've been my entire life, as not necessarily my entire life, but the entire time I was using, whether I realized it or not. It was just carrying all that baggage around, saying hi to those demons and being scared to face them head on instead of being able to face them and say, hey, you're not going to control my life. You're a part of it, but I'm going to make you my friend, and we're going to get through this together, and you're no longer going to decide what I'm going to do. It took me losing everything. Ex-wife, together for 13 years. We both struggled with our own issues, but I wasn't always the greatest husband, the greatest father. I tried to be, and the moments where I was sober or wasn't using, I was a damn good father, a damn good husband. But no matter how good you do, the bad, that doesn't black out the red in your debt. You know what I mean? That stuff you still carry with you. The people around you, when you hurt them, even when you're doing good, they still carry those scars and that hurt and that trauma. That if I'm looking back on it, a lot of it was my fault. Was whether I was in active addiction or not. And I'm a firm believer, and nobody decides that they're gonna wake up one day and say, I've got everything going for me. Let's fuck it all up and just delve into addiction.
Yep.
It's one of those demons that comes up to you slowly as a friend, disguised as a friend, and says, hey, let's hang out for a while. And then a while says, hey, I'm gonna be your roommate. Now I'm sleeping in your bed with you. You know what I mean?
Mm.
There's nowhere you go where you're apart from the demons that come with being an addict or being active in addiction. So, last year I lost my dad to cancer as well as cirrhosis of the liver. Mom's currently going through recovery, so she's a big supporter, but you can't really have somebody who's in the clutches of addiction stand next to you and help you through it. So I still got, a couple of friends that they want to see me succeed and do better, but unfortunately, I've shown them too many times that, you know, that I'm going to start this, but I'm not going to finish it. And
Right.
so after my dad died last year, the anxiety was so bad. So I mean, I'd have to wake up and have a drink just to function. So I wasn't throwing up or anything. I was missing work all the time. A boss who had given me a chance that I had worked for previously, a couple of months after he hired me, said, "What the hell, man? Where's the old Ronnie? Where's the Ronnie from the other place that we used to work at? I need him back." And it kind of started to sink in then. But after dad died and all the anxiety and everything that came with it, I took care of him in hospice for a while. But I think, and there's a lot of guilt over this too. I think I used that as an excuse to not have to go to work. It's like, all right, well, now I have a reason that's valid, but I abused that as well and started drinking more. He was concerned about me. My grandma was concerned about me. I mean, everybody was concerned about me. I was concerned about me at that time. I hadn't reached my rock bottom yet, So I'm the kind of guy, and this is something I'm working on currently. I'm the kind of guy that kind of waits till it's the last minute when it's do or die time. You know what I mean? That I've been that way my whole life. Just wait, I've got time, I got time, I got time. And then all of a sudden it's like, all right, I have zero time left. I've got nothing left. I've got no friends, nobody, no support system. And if I keep going down this road, I'm gonna fucking die.
Yeah.
And that's where I got to shortly after my dad died. So last year in November, no court systems or anything involved. I was trying, I think at the time, more to show everybody else that I was working on myself and trying to conquer this demon that I carried around with me for so long. So I started it, my recovery journey on my own back in November, but I was half-assing it. It's like, well, if I just do the minimum here, I can get by, and I can cheat a couple of days here and there. I can drink and get away with it. Used to drive drunk all the time, and though I didn't feel drunk, I'm sure I was well past the legal limit, and finally got to the point where things at home weren't going so hot anymore. We were each dealing with our own struggle, and for 13 years of that relationship with my ex-wife, I tried to take everything on it, and I started using that as a justification as to why I was allowed to go out and get fucked up on the weekends, which is where it started. It's
Right.
like, well, now I'm having bad days during the week, so we're just gonna drink a little bit then, and slowly crept up on me. Like I said, appeared as a friend at first, and then pretty soon I was sleeping with it and couldn't take a shower with it. And I'd cry to myself. I'd cry to the wife. I'd beg and plead. There was a couple of times where I'd actually called the cops on myself because the thoughts of suicide and the trauma and the anxiety were just too much. So I had myself committed. There was one time for a 3-day stay, and as soon as I got there, I fell back into that old habit of manipulating the system. It's like, well, I don't want to be here. Like, this isn't. I don't belong here with everybody else. I'm better than this. And so worked the system, got out in 3 days, and then went right back to it. But last year in November, really kind of started. I put myself into an intensive outpatient program, thinking that was going to be enough. Still had a couple issues here and there, and then ended up getting arrested. Um, got into an argument with the wife, and regardless of what happened, cops got called, and at that time I shouldn't have gone to jail. I wasn't guilty though. Looking back, um, I should have taken that as a sign, but that wasn't enough for me because once again I hadn't reached rock bottom, and so that was back in March of this year, and then no January. That was the end of January of this year. Was in jail for a couple of days, got out. Me and the wife were working things out. Still drinking, still active in our addiction. And at this time we've got two kids. My son, who was just diagnosed with autism just last month, and then my daughter. Unfortunately, they've probably suffered by far more than they ever should have growing up, going through
Yeah.
foster care and going through the judicial system, and seeing, parents who were battling with addiction. I always swore to myself that my kids would never have to experience that, because it was living hell, just 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, even on Christmas. The point is, I should have used that as an example, and yet I let myself become the very thing that I swore I would never become. Um, so not everybody chooses addiction, but anybody can become an addict. And realizing that, there were plenty of warning signs that I ignored. Well, just not having reached that rock bottom, I kept going, got arrested, tried to work things out. Ended up, we were arguing again. And instead of doing the sensible thing because I was drunk, I mean, I was plastered. Instead of walking away, I got into a car and drove off. And when I came back, the cops basically followed me into the garage and arrested me. They're like, "You're under arrest for a DUI." I was like, "Well, you guys didn't see me drive. You never pulled me over." It's coming up with every excuse in the book, being cocky, and then had to wait for the blood results. So both court cases are now pending. Still drinking, even though I'm on pretrial monitoring, but not rock bottom yet. Let's see how much further down we can go, right? And so finally got and I've always had an anger issue and a resentment issue. I like to blame my problems on other people. Even when I had good things going for me, it seemed that I would find something to get upset or angry about or resent. Well, I'm this person, so I didn't deserve this, or you did this, so I did this, which is how I got into my motorcycle accident and almost killed myself back in 2010, was just getting on angry, and that resentment only furthered the addiction, only fed the fire. So I was very resentful that I had to go to jail for the first time, even though I wasn't guilty of domestic violence at that time. Started drinking and didn't want to run in with the cops, and instead of walking, I decided to get into a car and drive. Well, finally got the videotape back, and man, I was so embarrassed. I was pissed with myself because I was wrecked, man. I'm lucky I didn't kill somebody, not only on that occasion, but on several other occasions. Once again, I'm a believer that the only reason that things weren't worse, that they didn't go further down, and I didn't lose myself even more than what I already did, or do something worse than the crimes I am guilty of. Not just the ones I got caught for, but the way I treated my family and my wife and everybody. I took everything for granted. But got out for the DUI because I got arrested for that, made bond again, and went right back home. And they're like, "Hey, should have been a warning sign. Make sure you're not drinking because you're on free trial. You got to do UAs." It's like, "Oh well, I'm in IOP again." After I got kicked out of the first IOP, I found another IOP that I got in, and once again started working and manipulating the system. It's like, well, if I drink on these days, I won't get popped on my UA, right?
Mm.
So continued down the path of destruction, and got to the point where at this point I've got protection orders on me. I'm still allowed no full contact with wife, ex-wife, and the kids. Drinking again, man, and just went right back to it, and didn't heed the warning label on the bottle, and ended up getting into it pretty bad with my wife. Got arrested again. This time definitely deserved it, and made some choices that I'd give anything to take back, but unfortunately, once those things are done, they're done, and cause some damage. Enough damage to the point where, the wife that I supported and that supported me and stood by me and was always there for me just wasn't having it anymore. I hurt her in ways that I still trying to forgive myself for, and that's something that I'm working on. Is you know going through the past instead of looking at how people have wronged me and how I got fucked over in the situation. Now the mindset's really changed. I finally hit rock bottom. Haven't been able to see my kids in over 60 days. Wife has moved on to somebody else already, and I don't blame her. I don't blame anybody for any of the shit I've gone through anymore. Looking back, it was plenty of warnings and plenty of choices and plenty of advice from people that truly cared, that are true friends that truly love me, which in my life has been really rare. I've worked and I've built those relationships, and they mean the world to me. And I pissed most of them down the drain, man, to the point where most people don't even want to talk to me anymore. Even though, as of today, I've got 104 days sober. And I mean, truly
Nice.
sober. I'm off most of my, and I don't. This is not a good idea for everybody, but I'm getting to the point now where I no longer need all of the medications that I was on, because I was on 13 different medications, three,
Yeah.
4 times a day just to try to stay stable. And even while I was on those medications, even though the warning labels clearly read "Don't drink," can cause issues, I decided to do my own thing, and it cost me dearly. But ended up catching another domestic violence charge, went to jail. So now I've got two domestic violence charges pending and a DUI pending. Go to court while I'm in jail, and I get the toxicology report back from when they arrested me for the DUI. And that was over 3 times the legal limit. I refused to blow, so they took my license for a year. And at this point, I've got, you know, a, a really nice car that I've gotten for the wife, a car for me. I've got a 64 Volkswagen hot rod that me and my dad built, plus, a Harley that was my brother's before he committed suicide. So built to life, came from nothing as a child. I mean, hand me down clothes that were 3 generations old and, barely had food on the table, lights on, and that kind of shit. And built myself a really nice life, had a beautiful, loving wife, lots of good friends that would do anything to help me, 2 wonderful kids that didn't deserve any of the shit that I put them through. And I drank it all away. And that's something that on a daily basis I have to try to. I mean, I ask God for forgiveness every day. I beg that He helps others forgive me for what I've done, that He forgives me for what I've done. But I also know I've gotten to the point where, I'm tired of beating myself up, like, and beating myself up and holding myself for beating myself up is not doing any good. Before, I was blaming my problems on everybody else. Well, I did this because this, and I was justified because of this. And now it's gotten to a point where it's, man, I had absolutely zero right to put any of them through any of that shit. And I wouldn't wish addiction on my worst enemy. I mean, I can't blame everything on addiction, but once you reach that point where you are an addict, I believe a lot of that choice is taken away from you. And I think that's why God, knocked me on my ass, so to speak, is He was started off as whispers, "Hey man, you need to get this figured out." And then He started talking to me and really kind of showed me, here's the warning signs and here's what's going to happen if you keep going down this path. And didn't listen, will continue down the path. And then God basically slapped me on my face, knocked me on my ass, and said, "All right, you've abused everything I've given you and have not been grateful for any of it." And I truly wasn't at the time, especially. So the last spell with the ex-wife happened in June. I ended up doing an additional 34 days in jail for that. I did about 35 days in jail after the DUI. So at that time, I wasn't there to support my wife. I wasn't there to help my kids, or to rebuild or try to repair any of the damage that I have caused. And I don't know that without being at that, because that was my rock bottom. It wasn't all the shit that happened to me as a kid. It wasn't, my brother committing suicide. None of that really gave me the attitude of being grateful, of turning that resentment into, man, I had a lot going for me. I could have made myself a hell of a life, making $100,000 a year, advancement opportunities, could have had my own dealership, being a service
Right.
manager, and I didn't. So it took me losing everything I truly care about, to finally realize how lucky I truly was to have come from what I did, to go through the hell that I did go through, and still be able to build my life that I felt was valuable, not only to
Right.
myself, but I had value to other people. Other people relied on me. And,
Right.
I took that as being a burden instead of a blessing. And, what hindsight being 2020, what I wouldn't give, um, to go back to that spot and talk to myself and be like, yo, man, like something really bad is gonna happen if you continue down this path. You're gonna lose everything. And I know you don't think you have a lot going for you, but you do. And that now, I do come at it from a place of love, and I'm working on forgiving myself. And I try to be grateful for just the little thing.
Well,
Just
Ronnie, I want to cut you off right there. The thing is this: you got to remember a couple things. When tragedy strikes us at any age, there's self help books. There's jump on YouTube, figure this out. There's counselors. There's what I mean. But no one prepares us for that. And even the people that are prepared to lose the people that are closest to them, bro. Even the people that like there's people that walk today. I know my mom's gonna die. I think it'd be better for her. Even when they pass, bro, those people are still crying. Those people still mourn. You know what I mean? So don't beat yourself up to say when I hear you say this happened, I can't use this. It wasn't an excuse, bro. That's not the excuse. The problem was you didn't know how to deal with it. No one corrected or showed you how to correct the behavior when this happened. You get what I'm saying? No one said,
yeah,
"Hey, bro, you probably shouldn't be doing this." As a father, as a brother, as somebody that's super close to you that got their head on straight. Hey, dude, you're tripping. Like, come on, man. You know what I mean? They're gonna get you know what I mean? That's the guidance we need. Now, you may not want to hear this part, but I'm gonna tell it to you. When you talk about like leaning into God and God's telling you this and that, you know what I mean? He's gonna tell you, he's gonna let you know, and you're recognizing it now. Well, can you imagine if you would have grabbed one of those thoughts back then when he's like, hey, hey, bro, this is your last chance, you know what I mean? Like, he's not gonna give up on you. You know what I mean?
yeah,
And and
amen.
I say this all the time, bro. You have to start off loving yourself. You have to. You have to do this for you, right?
Well, and that's
God
what I
has
got.
your children, bro. He's going to take care of them. He loves them. And this is, again, going to sound crazy. He loves them more than you love them. Promise you that. Okay? No, I'm being straight with you. I'm shooting you straight. I'm
I
sharing this
agree
from the
with you.
heart.
The only reason I laugh is that's one of the things, even though me and the ex aren't together right now, that's one of the things I'm grateful for, and one of the things keeping me going. It's things could have turned out a lot worse. And there was still further, as even though I hit my rock bottom, there was still further down that I could have gone. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so I finally reached
We
that
could be
point
not
where
having this meeting. that's a
exactly,
that's
no,
a pretty that's a
absolutely,
pretty good that's a pretty rock bottom, you know what I mean? But
yeah.
you have to realize, bro, once you put that to the side, fix you, focus on Ronnie, stay focused on Ronnie, stay doing you, because this is the thing. Well, a couple of things that you said bugged me a little bit about, you know, I could have had this. You're breathing, brother. You're breathing. You have both your arms, both your legs. You're able to work. You're a working man. I hear it in your voice. You know what I mean? There's no I could have. You know what I mean? You're not an old man laid on your back that you can't do something right now. You have the mentality to do it. You know what I mean? Love you, fix you. Those babies are gonna love you. They
Exactly.
love you. They're gonna love you. They're gonna be right there. Don't worry about nothing else. Worry about you. Start working that program of working that core issue of how you're doing it now, talking about what messed me up, what got in my head enough, and learn how to deal with those when they arise. When your brother's birthday comes around, when the death anniversaries come around, when somebody else that you run into like myself talks about, hey, I lost my brother, I lost my mother, I lost my grandma. You know what I mean? These things
Yeah.
aren't triggers. And when we start working those little issues like that, we can, man, you'd be surprised how one foot in front of the other just starts moving.
No, it's funny you say that as far as me needing to work on myself on loving me, because the entire time in the past it was always had to do with somebody else. Oh, well, I can't do this because I've got to take care of somebody, or somebody's depending on me, or this person messed up, or this person wronged me. And now it's the exact opposite. Now I'm learning to put myself first, because the only person that's going to save me other than God is me. He'll give me the tools, but it's up to me to use them.
You
So
gotta put the work in.
absolutely. And it is work. Any recovery program is a program of action, and the action starts with you. I can't control what somebody else is going to do. I can't control all of my, what's going to trigger me, or what's going to happen. I can't control whether or not I'm riding my bike to an interview, a car tries to run me over and I swerve and miss a curve and break my arm. I can't control that. What I can control is what I do after that, how I react to that. And, even though that just happened Tuesday, today's Friday, I still got to see an orthopedic surgeon to see if I need surgery. I was kind of laughing with somebody at one of the Department of Human Services building today. I was like, it could have been a lot worse, man. Had that car actually run me over, I wouldn't be here doing this podcast, sharing my testimony and hopefully helping the next person in line.
Yeah,
And, I know the person I am. I know deep down, outside of addiction, outside of all the bullshit that's happening, of all the excuses that you can make up and use, I know who I am. I know that I love people, that I truly love pretty much everybody I come into contact with. I don't wish
mm,
anything bad on anybody because I've been there. You know what I mean? I've been through hell more than once, and I've come out the other side alive, and I'm very grateful for that. I'm starting to learn to be grateful for, not just the good things that are going on in my life, but the opportunities to learn from the lessons when things weren't going so great. Because that's what they are. Everything's an opportunity to learn and reflecting and now instead of, me saying, "Oh, Ronnie, you're a piece of shit. You could have done this better," or, just give up now. Now it's, man, I've got a lot to fight for. I've got a lot to live for. You know what I mean? And I've dealt with
yeah,
depression my whole life. I feel as though I'm slowly starting to tame that beast the more I love myself, regardless of what anybody else thinks. I've changed a lot of opinions from people that were close to me to people I never thought I'd lose or to I never thought they'd ever have a bad thing to say about me. Well, I gave them every excuse to now it's more about, all right, now I'm reflecting on the day's actions of, hey, regardless of the bad, if there was anything bad, regardless of that, what went well today? What am
yeah,
I thankful for? And it's the little stuff. I was able to wake up today. I was able to get on the bus, even though I don't drive anymore or can't drive because I had that privilege taken away from me due to my own actions. Still finding a way to make it work, still finding things to be grateful for. I'm grateful I can go get food tomorrow. I'm grateful that I'm living in a sober living home to where I have the opportunity to truly focus on myself and not worry about some of life's bigger problems or what seem like
right,
bigger problems. Because if I can't get me figured out, there's no way I'm going to be able to get everything else figured out. If I can't figure out how to be the best version of me for me, then there's no way that I can be the best version of me for my kids, for my ex-wife if we ever do get back together, for any future spouse. The root of it is I've got to, and this is what I'm finally realizing and getting to a point where I'm able to push through some of the struggles, the mishaps or whatever is now I've decided that, what's truly important in my life is number one, my respect for myself. I want to be able to go to sleep at night with a clear conscience. And when I reflect on the day, I want to be able to say, yeah, there's a couple of things that I could have done better, or I could have managed my emotions or my reactions maybe a little bit better or put a little more work in. But now I'm also at the point where, you know, or I'm getting to the point where when I reflect on the day, it's like, you know what, man, you did pretty damn good. Like I'm finally able to say once again that I'm proud of the work that I'm putting in, on
yeah,
myself, on my recovery, because it's not easy. Addiction will beat you to your knees and it will take your life if you let it. But it's being grateful of the things that I've lost, that now I'm trying to work back to regain. And I'll know I'll get some of it back. I may not get all of it back, once damage is done, sometimes there's no fixing pieces that have fallen apart. But what I can do is I can learn from the experience and I can make damn sure that I don't ever go down that path again. And
yeah.
that's exactly where I'm headed. Every day go to group meetings. I still go to AA meetings regularly. Coming up on my 4 months of sobriety, of true sobriety, which I've never had since I was 15 or 16 years old.
Let's go.
Honestly, I'm very thankful that it got to the point that it did, in the sense that it took that much to really open my eyes and see it gave me purpose. And that purpose is what drives me daily to be just a little bit better today than I was yesterday. If I could do that, then today was a success. If I don't use, if I don't drink, and if I did one thing better today than I did yesterday, what regardless of what that is, then I look at today's sex and then I look forward to tomorrow. I no longer have anxiety of what's to come. Yeah, there's a lot of unknowns, there's a lot of hard work, but the work is worth it because I'm worth it. You know, I'm
There you go.
worth working on. I'm worth that second chance.
There you
Even
go.
if they don't want to give it to me, I'm gonna give it to myself. God's giving it to me. And so I'm worth the
Absolutely.
fight. I'm
Amen.
worth the second chance, and I'm worth loving. And nobody else is gonna love me if I don't love myself. So
There
before
you
I
go.
do anything outwards, I've got to go inwards and truly be okay, not only with what's happened in the past, but with what I am, who I am today, and the progress that I've made. I've been out of jail. I got released from county jail September 9th. And, having not had gone through that, I would be where I was today. So sometimes it takes losing everything to be grateful for what you had and to be able to find that drive and purpose of, well, shit, now I want it that. Now
Yeah.
now that I know what I had, now I have something to drive for. And I don't care what anybody says. In fact, if there's doubters out there that are like, oh well, he's done it for 4 months this time, we'll see how long he lasts. It's like, no, 'cause there comes a point where there really is a choice. You make the choice. It's like, I don't care what happens, I'm not going to use today. I'm not going to drink today. And I can't worry about whether I'm going to do it tomorrow or the next day. Tomorrow has enough worries of its own. All I can worry about is today and what I'm doing right now.
Yep.
And I'm truly proud of the progress I've made and the person I'm becoming again, and to be able to say that I do love me and that I'm working
That's good.
towards loving me more and more each day.
That's good. I'm glad to hear that. That's the mentality you have to do to succeed, man. And if I could give you one other piece of advice, it would be when you're sitting there at that house and absolutely have nothing to do. I know they keep you guys busy, but when you have nothing to do, man, just take 5, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, man, to open that Bible. For real. You're not doing nothing. Yep, there you go. Open that
It's with
Bible
me
and just do a
wherever I
little reading,
go.
man, and just surrender, man. I promise you, you're gonna come out the other side. You're gonna do big things, man. I promise you, you're gonna do big things. Just stay focused and keep your head straight, and always remember to respect where you were and where you're going.
Amen.
And it'll all work out. I'm gonna close this up, man. If you don't mind, let me pray for you before we go, though, real quick. I usually
Thank you.
don't, but it's on my heart. But dear Heavenly Father, I ask you to please be there for Ronnie and show him the way, guide him, Lord. He's been through so much. Teach him how to deal with his aching heart and his heart of loneliness I hear in his voice. Please, Lord, I ask you to show him and guide him in the ways that are just miraculously closer to you. I know he needs you. He knows he needs you. And I hear it in his voice that he wants you, Lord. I ask you to look over his children while he goes through this and let them see the father that he is and that the father that he wants to be. All of this I ask you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, brother.
Um, yes, absolutely, Ronnie. I really believe wholeheartedly you're gonna do big things, man. Let's keep in touch. Let's get. I hear you got a few months in there. Let's reevaluate this like at 6 months. I'll reach back out to you, or you reach back out to me. I got your number and info. Let's get you back on the show and see how things are going. How's that sound? I'll hold you
I'd love to,
accountable if
man.
anybody else will. All right, sounds good, brother. I appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I appreciate you, man. Thanks for bringing me on here and let me share. I hope